Hello, audience members, fans, viewers, T.B.O.G faithful. We are here.
And haters. Don't forget the haters.
Oh, yeah,
we
of
love
course.
them too.
Yeah, you haters matters too. You haters make us money every time you have to come back to our videos and press stuff. And start arguments.
Hey guys, how you doing? Another series of podcasts.
Oh, yes. Now, I hope you like the way that we go about doing it, where it's going to be one podcast part per day. However, you'll be able to download all of it as a whole as an MP3, so you can listen to it in your car or wherever you like to do that, because we hear people like to do that.
I don't know. I think this is us being lazy, though. Instead of working on videos, we're just sitting here yapping about stuff.
Well, hey, I worked on a I worked on the top 10 Zelda video that came out yesterday, so yeah.
I guess you need a little breather, right?
So yeah, I don't know where this laziness comes from on my part. Yeah, you're slacking, but I'm working.
Okay. I'm just messing.
I know. All right, so anyway, news topic for today. Sony hacks. Now, for those of you who don't know, apparently it's recently it's been recently discovered that
Well, what happened was that several weeks ago,
okay,
some hackers broke into Sony, basically through their they basically targeted their pictures, their movie distribution line, and apparently this is due to, and by the reports I'm hearing, this was done by a North Korean group who hacked Sony Pictures, and the reason why is because they were upset over the fact that Sony Pictures will be releasing a new comedy pretty soon, starring Seth Rogen and James Franco.
Sure.
And the whole thing is that there are these two interviewers who are hired by the CIA to go assassinate the dictator of North Korea. And so
that's why.
Apparently North Korea didn't like that too much, so they hacked Sony, and they leaked a lot of real personal emails between the head of the motion picture industry. Well, one of the emails has to do with Sony's biggest property right now, at least movie wise, and that's the Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah.
And they have been, well, first of all, Marvel fans have been going on and on this year about how they really want the movie rights to Spider-Man to revert back to Marvel Studios.
Well, yeah, because it's a no-brainer, especially with now, considering how Marvel has just been, especially ever since they've been with Disney, have been successful in the movie industry.
They have made over $4 billion at the box office.
Yeah, like it's been insane. Guardians of the Galaxies. You got a movie about a friggin' raccoon.
Yeah, it's the number one movie in the world.
Number one movie of the year.
Yeah,
and you got so many successful Marvel movies from Marvel Studios and Disney, and they're already talking about how they want to expand the universe and tell like stories from the comic books. Like you got the Civil War, which was one of the biggest series of comics back a few years ago.
Whether people think Civil War is good or not, it's kind of mixed. But it was big. You know?
Yeah, it was a big story. It ended pretty shitty.
It had kind of a mixed response from fans, but it could be interesting to see. Well, the thing about it is that's kind of the next big phase for Marvel, and that's supposed to be starting in 2016 with Captain America, the next Captain America movie, which is Captain America Civil War.
And a Civil War movie, not a bad idea. Pretty good, but there's one problem. You've lost a series of characters because this story, although it heavily involves the controversy between Maria Hill, Captain America, and Iron Man, and a few other characters. However, there were a lot of other major characters that were involved in that story, like Reed Richards, who was siding with...
That's another good one, too.
Yeah, Iron Man, who's from... if you don't know who Reed Richards is, he's Fantastic Four. He's
Mr. Fantastic,
yeah.
Like they're over 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, he was a big part in the Civil War story, working for Iron Man, and, of course, being the brainiac that he is. But also, on Captain America's side, you had Spider-Man.
He was the major one, because he was the guy who was kind of really caught in the middle, because at first he was with Iron Man, and he kind of looked at Iron Man as a mentor, but because then there was a major event happen, and then he ended up going to Captain America.
Well, yeah, because when the whole thing started with now this is kind of a little bit of spoilers for the Civil War story. Like for those who don't know, the story is about the government wanting to take total control over the superheroes because they think that from a vigilante standpoint, there's just too much chaos going on, so they would rather have everybody's identification in the system so that they know who all the superheroes are, they know who all the supervillains are, so they basically kind of have like control a monopoly. A monopoly amongst the superheroes and the villains.
Yeah.
But there were renegades that, of course, of the superheroes that didn't want that. Captain America didn't think that was right, and of course, a whole bunch of other superheroes didn't want that either. Whereas on the other side, you have Captain America, you had Iron Man, who was all for it. Now, this is where the separation began, because when you got a character like Iron Man, who is the richest son of a bee in the world, at least in terms of Marvel, everybody already knows who he is. Like, he's got nothing to fear in terms of, yeah, everybody knows my secret identity. They know I'm Iron Man. What are you going to do? I'm rich. Whereas, say, you have somebody like Spider-Man, who is very low tier in terms of community.
Very more street level.
Yeah, very more street level. Very exposed. Like, if he was to get his identity exposed to the world and all his villains knew, like, there's not much he can do to defend himself. Like, his family is screwed. Like,
right. That was probably the best part of the whole Civil War saga, was the situation with Spider-Man, what he was going through.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Spider-Man was probably on Iron Man's side at first, because he believed, like, well, I'm friends with the big guy. He's got the money. He can defend me. The government will protect me, and they'll probably put our families under, like, a governmental protection.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not how it was going to go down, and it didn't take him long to figure that out, and said, okay, no, I can't do this, so I need to join Captain America, because he already knew the risks that this was going to be to the general public and everybody involved.
Right.
And so it just led to a series of clashes and a lot of politics, and it was really well done.
Unfortunately, it also led into One More Day, which is the worst thing ever happened to Spider-Man. But that's another story. But anyway.
It not just One More Day, but it also left into the Big Bang with Steve Rogers. But, so it ended pretty badly, but it was still a really well-written story.
So they're bringing this to the films. Mm-hmm. And like we said, Spider-Man was a major part of it. But in the movieverse, Marvel Studios does not have the rights to the Spider-Man character,
or Reed Richards,
or the four Fantastic Four.
Yeah, so like two primes that you need for this story,
right? So they were wondering, okay, how can we go across this, or how can we maybe use other characters in this role? Well, it turns out through these emails that Sony and Marvel had actually had talks about bringing Spider-Man, or at least the deal was that they would not only Spider-Man would appear in the Marvel movies, but Marvel would make their own brand new trilogy of Spider-Man movies. Mm-hmm. They would make the films, but Sony would
profit.
Yeah, would have the profits, still have the rights. Mm-hmm. Apparently, those broke down. At least broke down for now. And
so, and by broke down, you mean it fell through?
Yeah, it fell through. Oh. Yeah. So, and of course, all the Spider-Man fans right now are just hopping mad over it, because now I will be the first to admit. I really enjoyed Sam Raimi's the three Spider-Mans. Tobey Maguire. I enjoy those. I have to admit, though, I have not seen the two Amazing Spider-Man movies.
I saw the first one.
Okay.
It's at least on par.
Okay.
It's on par.
I heard they were darker. More. Is that true?
Yeah, they are. Like, Aunt May is definitely not the Aunt May that we knew from... Like, she's very, very... Oh, what's the word? More
proactive?
Yes and no, but she's more like unaware, but always worrying constantly, because she knows something's up.
Okay.
She's very worrisome. Like, she's constantly, because she's seeing, unlike Tobey Maguire, she's actually seeing Peter come home with bruises, and she's seeing him come home beaten. So it's like, worst case, she's thinking that he's getting involved in gangs, and that's a much more serious and darker thing. The way, and Andrew Garfield, who I think is actually pretty good. Like, Quentin Flynn and Quentin Flynn, actor who plays Axel, we actually talked about this, and he likes Andrew Garfield and thinks he's a much better...
That was another thing, too, just starting to interrupt. Mm-hmm. If Marvel got the rights to Spider-Man and they made their own movies, they wouldn't bring Andrew Garfield on. They would bring someone else in.
Well, that's fine, because, like, you can have different guys play Spider-Man. But, yeah, Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, he really does not do the Tobey Maguire thing at all. He really plays his own Peter Parker, where he's very... not connecting. Like, he's kind of just brushing Aunt May off, like, don't get involved in my life, stay out of my life, you don't want to be a part of this, and it's really kind of tearing her apart. So yeah, it is darker in a sense that there's subjects that you think should be handled better, but overall it's not bad.
Yeah, then came the sequel. I haven't seen it. I don't think you've seen it, but I've heard very mixed opinions about the sequel. Of course, you can always listen to Spoonie's legendary rant on the Spider-Man 2. And you got, by the way, You gotta be careful, man. Oh shoot, Spider-Man fans are. I'm not. I hate generalizing, but Spider-Man fans are getting kind of that reputation of being, those type of fans.
Those fans.
Yeah, I hope that's not true, but anyway, a lot of people again are very mixed on the way that Sony is handling the Spider-Man franchise, and they want them to go back to Disney Marvel, and or at least try to work out some sort of deal. First off, what do you think about Spider-Man? Should Sony and Marvel work out a deal?
Absolutely. I thought it was if it fell through, I really think that this is a missed opportunity on both parts, because it would have gone to show, not just because would have made a great series of movies, but it would have gone to show that two companies can work together and create something special. Like, again, going back to Kingdom Hearts. Like, you had companies that literally had absolutely no business with each other, doing nothing with each other. And just by pure accident in an elevator, you had an executive from, like, Square Enix, a Japanese company studio, and you had an executive from Disney Works, and they talked in the elevator and said, wouldn't it be interesting if this happened or this happened? And somehow they actually brought it together and were able to make something happen just because they wanted to, and they thought that there's something special here, and boom, it happened. Just because money gets in the way, like it would have been great if Sony and Marvel could, like, put all that aside and say, yeah, we have contracts that we have to abide by, but that doesn't mean that we can't come together and make something really special and work our way around it, because everybody wants it and they need to see it. You want it, I want it. We can make this work. And they can. But it's just there's too many wrong people in the wrong seats.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a major thing that's going on with Sony right now. Well, just to jump in a little quick about what you're saying about all this, would I like to see a crossover or see Spider-Man in the Marvel movies?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure I would. However, I think right now Marvel really doesn't need Spider-Man that badly, because what was the last movie? Guardians of the Galaxy with a freaking raccoon. They got all these different characters, and they've proven they can make big time, money making movies. So it just seems like Spider-Man may need Marvel more than Marvel needs Spider-Man, at least right now.
It is. It really is.
Another thing too is that what you said earlier about having the wrong people being in the wrong seats, I think that's the major problem when it comes to Sony. And Sony right now is not doing all that well. It seems like the only real...
Yeah, they're not doing financially too well.
It seems like the only thing they got really going well for them right now is the PlayStation 4. And their major movie project right now, again, is Spider-Man. And the last two films, well, especially Spider-Man 2, has not reached that level of...
it just seems like there's a lot of egos going on.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that over at Sony, and this is just me going on more of the direction they're going, it just seems like there's no one guy in charge saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. It seems like we have too many cooks in the kitchen. Where you go look at Marvel Studios, and the top guy is Kevin Feige. He's the one that makes the decision. Over Warner Brothers now, with the DC properties, it's Kevin Sugihara. He says, okay, this is the plan. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this with our properties. Sure. It just seems like there's no one like that over at Sony. And I said, like, when it comes to when you have a ship, you need one captain. You need one guy who's going to be on top and making all the decisions. If you have a whole bunch of people, trying to throw in stuff and trying to,
you're basically throwing a lot of monkey wrenches into the into the cogs.
Yeah, you're throwing a bunch of stuff in there. But like I said, I don't know. I haven't seen the two Amazing Spider-Man films. I really should sit down and watch them to see if how they really do stack up. But
spoiler alert: Gwen Stacy does.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me if Spider-Man. Here's another thing too: if Sony came up with a plan and they made a really good Spider-Man, like if the next Spider-Man movie is really, really good, I don't think people... let me just say that if it's really, really good, people aren't going to care. Because people had the same feeling about the X-Men films. Because especially after X-Men 3 and that first X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. No. This was before that. The X-Men 3 The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine, that terrible one where Deadpool, his mouse showed up. People were like, this is so bad. X-Men should go back to Marvel. Please, 20th Century Fox, get back to Marvel. But then 20th Century Fox, they got it right. They did X-Men First Class. Then they did the Wolverine, and then they did X-Men: Days of Future Past, and now they got the X-Men franchise back on track. And now no one's saying, no one's saying X-Men should go back to Marvel because 20th Century Fox is doing it right.
So far,
if you do make good movies, it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it comes from Marvel Studios or whatever. If they do a good film, and there's enough for Spider-Man there. Spider-Man is one of the biggest of all time.
Yeah, I think what helps Spider-Man in terms of Sony is like the Spider-Man fans generally don't care too much for their movies as much as they might be forcing themselves to. But the thing is, kids love it.
Right, but there's enough stuff there, enough history with Spider-Man for them to work with and to make a good film.
Yeah, or a decent one,
or at least a decent one. Spider-Man still sells a ton of
Well, yeah, because like
merch,
Spider-Man is one of the biggest top-tiered superheroes, like alongside Batman and Superman. So it's kind of like Star Wars in that direction, where like big-time Star Wars fans absolutely despise what's been going on with the Star Wars universe as of right now. Mm-hmm. But kids, they eat it up. Like they're buying the toys. They're watching the Rebels show. They're watching the Clone Wars show. Like,
that's a very good point.
Like, you're really franchising off of and making the money off of these kids with the parents with the wallets. Whereas like the mature Spider-Man and core fans really most of the time do not care for the product because they'll think most of the time they'll probably think it's decent or there were some good qualities, but it wasn't great. And I think the reason why they wanted to go back to Marvel is because, again, Marvel turned a raccoon movie into the #1 movie of the year. They want to see what can they do with a Spider-Man movie. Can they do something like that?
Well, Marvel has a plan. You could tell that's a plan, and then that's finally something Warner Brothers and DC is starting to develop a plan. And the thing with Sony is that you didn't really see a plan. They just kind of said,
"Well, we have to renew this contract, otherwise we're going to lose it."
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna make our own shared universe. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna set up this and set up that. Well, before they're like trying to put like the I don't know how that's saying the cart before the horse. Or you have to make sure that Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the first two Amazing Spider-Man movies are as good as they can be before you start expanding off to these other things. Because Spider-Man does have a lot of characters to work with.
Yeah,
and I think can they get it right? I remember I said if they make a good movie, you just gotta shake my head like, no, they can't. Well, if they get a plan, like I said, and they get the right people involved, now. The next big Spider-Man film that they want to do is the Sinister Six.
Sure.
Now, of course, Sinister Six is one of the biggest things in Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
If they do that well,
mm-hmm.
And then they can get the train back on the tracks. And they can lead into Amazing Spider-Man 3 and those other ones.
Yeah, it can, but at the same time, people are kind of worried, like, are we going to get the Spider-Man 3 syndrome where there were too many enemies and they didn't know how to focus on one story?
Yeah, that's the thing when you have 6 villains. But it's like I said, would I like to see Sony and Marvel do a crossover together?
Of course you would.
Sure I would. But if Sony can... They're supposed to have some sort of big summit in January where Sony's going to be, like, getting together and just having this big, like, powwow discussion about what are we doing with our Spider-Man franchise and what's the next thing we should do. I've heard even stories that they might even think about bringing back Sam Raimi or
renew Tobey Maguire's contract.
Redo Tobey Maguire's contract. Like, I don't know, but like I said, well, it's going to be interesting to see what Sony wants to do. It's just right now they're definitely against
or actually
the grain.
What would be interesting and they could do it was they could bring Madam Web into it.
That's true.
And and if they were to get Tobey Maguire back, they could combine the universes.
They've been talking about that too.
Like, that would actually be a good Spider-Man movie to bring Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man together in a combined Madam Web universe because that's happened.
Yeah,
and like you could bring in like that one disfigured like pig Spider-Man character and like. Come on, like I'm writing a good movie for you.
Well, the problem is we as comic book fans we're aware of that, and that would be great. But the common moviegoer, would that be a little too confusing for
No, because who the hell knew about the Guardians of the Galaxy? Who the hell knew about Rocket Raccoon? Mm-hmm. Before Marvel vs. Capcom 3 made him a character.
Okay.
Like, nobody. So yeah, you could do it. You can make these characters and put them in there. If Guardians of the Galaxy can do it, if Marvel can do it with these characters, of course, anybody can. It just depends on the writing and the hype.
I just think Sony just needs a clear direction. And, like I said, they need this. They need this because they're not doing all that well. And they just need some sort of clear direction. And Marvel fans are so against them right now. They just, hey, there's even this huge petition right now. We just want Sony to give it back
Break
up.
the contract.
Yes, give it back to Marvel. So it's gonna be interesting to see what Sony does because Spider-Man's one of the biggest characters out there.
Yeah, he's one of the most widely known figures in the world.
And I want him to do well. I want him to do well. So.
Well, I guess we'll find out what happens to Spider-Man in the near future. So keep your heads up. We'll find out later.